Understand this. Exposure is important because exposure affects perception. You see things differently when you are exposed. So you are in your home with your family. You've not visited any other family. You will be seeing things in a particular way. But let's say you go and visit 4 or 5 friends and you see how they run their home. What is going to happen is that it's going to influence your perception. It's going to influence the way you see things. You are now going to start seeing things differently. Maybe you are a pastor of a church, you pastor a ministry. You are only in your services. You are not exposed to other church services, other conferences. You don't visit any conference. It's not safe. But where, let's say, you are following, maybe there's a minister seminar being organized by another ministry, a genuine ministry that you know of, and you get exposed. You visit a seminar, you visit a conference, you now get exposed. Maybe you are trusting God to open branches. You now visit a church where the pastor has opened a lot of branches. When you get into that environment, exposure happens. So exposure is actually a change of environment. Moving from your environment to another environment so that your perception will now change, so that your perspective will now change. That is why exposure is important. 2, exposure creates and causes motivation. Exposure creates and causes motivation. You see the possibility of greatness. You see the possibility of greatness. Some people are only skewed to one perception, so they don't see the possibility of greatness. But when you are exposed, you now see the possibility of greatness. Your company had 2 branches. You now visit another company that has 10 branches. You are like, wow, it means that 10 branches is possible. Maybe you even have the chance to speak to the CEO of that company, and he tells you that, you know something, we're struggling for some time. The company was not increasing, but in a matter of time, God really helped us when we put this and this and this in place. And then the company began to expand. Our clientele increased. More people we now got better feedback from our clients. Now, as you listen to this, what will happen is motivation will be created. Motivation will be caused in your mind. You will now begin to see the possibility of greatness, because you are now speaking to someone who was where you are now, and the person is no longer there. So you are now motivated that, wow, if he could move, it means there is a possibility of increase for my company. 3, exposure. Exposure expands your mental capacity. Your mind is stretched. Exposure expands your mental capacity. What happens is that your mind will be stretched. There'll be a stretching of your mind. You see things differently now. Your mind will be stretched. What you thought was not possible, all of a sudden looks possible for you. Maybe you had ever made a statement that so and so is not possible ever in life. It is not possible for a company to experience such and such. It's not possible for a family to experience such and such. It's not possible for a church or a ministry to experience such and such. It's not possible for my life to experience such and such. And then you are now exposed to someone who is walking in that reality. Your mind will now be stretched. Your mental capacity will be stretched. 4, exposure. The first capacity building factor, exposure. 4, exposure creates room for new ideas. Exposure creates room for new ideas. You are running a company. The company is running in a certain way. All you are used to is the ideas you have. You now have the chance to tour another company doing something similar. As you get into the company, you are going around, you are like, wow. You are seeing their factories, you are like, wow, we can implement this. We can employ this, explore this. We can employ this in our establishment. What is happening is that room is being created for new ideas, because you are now seeing things differently. New ideas are coming. Ideas that have never crossed your mind because of exposure. Those ideas begin to cross your mind. Maybe you pastor a church, you go and visit a church for maybe a special program. You are just sitting at the back and you are just watching. You watch out the choir's ministry and you're like, wow, the choir can do this. You watch how the announcements are made. You're like, wow, I can employ this idea. You watch the sitting arrangement, the order of service, and you think this is going to be beneficial for the church I'm pastoring. As I pray about it, I think God will give me the leading. God will give me the go ahead to employ this. What is happening is that more ideas are coming, new ideas are coming. That is one of the advantages of exposure. And then five, exposure gives you access to feedback. Exposure gives you access to feedback. You get to know what you are doing right or doing wrong. Exposure gives you access to feedback. You get to know what you are doing right or doing wrong. So you are now exposed to new information, to a new environment. Maybe you are speaking to someone who is doing better than you in that field of leadership you are. And the person tells you that, oh, do you know something? When I started this, I used to do it this way. But I realized that no, it is wrong. It is rather supposed to be this way. Only to realize that the person is referring to what you are currently doing. What is happening is that you are now receiving feedback. Because the person is more advanced, the person has access to information you don't have access to. So you are now getting counsel. You are now getting counsel. In Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14, the Bible says, where no counsel is, the people fall. And in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Proverbs 24, verse 6. It says, for with wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in the multitude of counselors there is safety. So when we are exposed, we now receive feedback. Sometimes you give yourself the feedback just by seeing what others are doing. You now give yourself feedback that, do you know something? I think we are doing the wrong thing. This is self-feedback. You yourself analyzing what you are doing and saying what we are doing is right or what we are doing is wrong. Now, where the feedback is positive, you are now encouraged to continue in that direction you are going. Because for some people, they are in a certain direction, but they are wondering, are we doing the things well? Are we not doing it well? Then you now meet someone who is doing better than you in that leadership capacity, in that leadership area, in that leadership portfolio. And the person tells you, oh, do you know something? This is what we are doing and we are getting results. You are now encouraged to stay on course. So that is also positive feedback. The negative feedback, what I mean by negative feedback is where you receive feedback that something you are doing is wrong. That is one of the advantages of exposure. So we need exposure to build capacity.